Time is 5 o'clock. Good evening and welcome to the August 2023 meeting of the Omaha Public Power District Board of Directors. Thank you all for joining us in person at the Omaha Douglas Civic Center and remotely via WebEx. I hope you and your loved ones are staying safe and healthy. With me in person today are my fellow board members, Amanda Bogner, Mike Kavanaugh, Matt Core, Sarah Howard, Janice Molhoff, Craig Moody, and Mary Spurgeon. We also have President and CEO Javier Fernandez, our General Counsel Steve Bruckner with the Fraser Stryker Law Firm, and members of our board and meeting support staff. Board meeting support staff. OPPD executive leadership team and subject matter experts are also participating in today's meeting in person and via WebEx. Additionally, we currently have 12 members of the public, several members of the public in person. Eventually, we're going to get that right. Several members of the public in person, and we have 12 members attending via WebEx, consisting of OPPD employees and members of the public. As a reminder to board members, executive leadership team, and OPPD staff, please mute your microphones to reduce background noise, as well as your cell phones. To members of the public, thank you for attending. You are in listen-only mode. If you have any technology questions, please use the chat feature in WebEx to communicate with the event host. If you are disconnected from the WebEx conference, we ask that you rejoin in the same manner as when you originally joined. Right here at the beginning, I want to give respect to Terrence Bud Crawford for being the undisputed champion of the world and for his steadfast commitment to both North Omaha and our entire city. Congrats, champ. With that, I'd like to pass it to Javier Fernandez and for a safety briefing for our location and to provide other safety reminders.
Thank you, Chair Williams. I'm going to ask Josh Clark to do the physical safety briefing for us.
Good evening. Welcome to the August board meeting. Hopefully everyone had a good break during the month of July. As always, we'll start with a quick physical safety brief. In the event of any type of evacuation, we'll use the stairwells on either side of the room and go outside of the building. I don't think we'll have to worry about any weather, but if that was the case, we would use the stairwells to go down into the storm shelters. We also have access to AEDs, fire suppression materials, and we also have some extra first aid equipment that we brought as well. So if anybody needs any type of emergency items, please let us know, or the deputy sheriffs, and we'll make sure we get you help as quickly as possible. We also advise for any of those listening online or on their phones to always have access to first aid and fire suppression materials too at their homes or wherever they might be at. In addition to that, it is getting hot again this next week, so please stay hydrated and I'll make sure that you stay safe. So with that, I'll turn it back over to everyone here. Have a good board meeting.
Thank you, Josh. Really quick here on the just another point on the heat, and I'm always reminded by our safety team that if you're going to be working out in the heat, you usually need to start hydrating 24 hours before you begin. So it's really not enough to bring a water bottle with you as you're working. By that time, it's too late. So just another reminder to plan ahead. On psychological safety, I'm going to focus on respect. It is one of the 5 pillars of psychological safety, and I think it's important as we come into conversations that oftentimes have differing point of views. Coming in with an understanding of mutual respect is a foundation for people to feel safe, to bring their ideas, to debate and discuss and have healthy outcomes. Next slide, please. The focus for August is speaking up for safety. A cornerstone of a safe workplace culture is our ability to speak up. So again, talking about psychological safety, it's one of our focus topics for August. Hand injuries has been and usually a topic that we keep very much in the forefront. August has been an active month for these type of injuries. Over the last 3 years, 60% of injuries requiring medical attention beyond first aid in August involve injuries to fingers and thumbs. So it's something that we continue to remind our employees, and I take an opportunity to remind the public. This is as we're coming close to the fall season, we are probably working outside in our yards and projects outside. Wearing the appropriate PPE is important. Protective gloves become very, very handy here. No pun intended. Avoiding autopilot as we finish up our summer activities and we're preparing for school. If you're like me, I oftentimes I'm distracted with too many things going on, and so distracted driving becomes another big hazard. Avoiding these autopilot mode when you're driving back home or you're driving to a different place and you don't remember which streets you took. That's usually not a good sign. So it's just a good reminder of staying alert on the road. It's oftentimes the most dangerous activity that any of us perform during the day is getting behind the wheel. So it's just a reminder of stay alert. There will be a lot more children on the road in the mornings and in the afternoons coming and going from school. So please be careful. And that concludes my safety briefing.
Great, thank you. Now let's run through our guidelines for the conduct of the meeting. This regular board meeting will follow the agenda made available to the public on oppd.com. This meeting is being conducted in person with WebEx conferencing and is being recorded. Our board meetings have public comment periods on the agenda. Comments made by all parties during the meeting are part of the official public record. After the introduction of action items, board members will ask clarifying questions from staff, and then I will ask for public comment. After public comment, the board will conduct its discussion of the matter and then vote. Also, before we adjourn, there will be an opportunity to comment on other matters of district business. We will take comments in the room first and then via WebEx. For in-person attendees, if you wish to make a comment, please line up behind the microphone in the center of the room. Please state your name, address, and the name of any organization or person you represent. Each individual will be allotted 3 minutes per matter pending. To assist you, we will use the timer that is in the room. Ms. Lane will signal when you have 30 seconds remaining, as well as when time is up. If you have written materials, please deliver them to the OPPD representatives in the room. Next, we will review the 2 options for WebEx attendees to notify us. Option 1, which is being displayed now, involves sending the meeting technology host a message using the chat feature, simply stating that you wish to speak.
Thank you, Chair Williams. For those of you who have joined us using a computer or WebEx mobile app, you will find a button in your WebEx interface to open the chat panel. Once opened, you may send your message to the meeting technology host. Requests to provide comments will be relayed to Chair Williams for recognition during the public comments section.
Option 2, which is being displayed now, involves the hand raise feature.
WebEx allows attendees to virtually raise their hand. You may use this feature to indicate to OPPD that you wish to be recognized to provide comments. The hand raise button can be found in the lower control bar of WebEx. After you have provided your comments, please press the hand raise button again to virtually lower your hand. And for those of you who have joined the meeting using only a telephone, WebEx has a hand raise feature that is activated by pressing *3 to raise and lower your hand. When we see your hand raised, we'll acknowledge you by referencing a portion of your phone number. For example, caller with the phone number beginning in 402-123. If you wish to provide comments when recognized, please wait a brief moment to be unmuted and begin speaking. At this time, if you would like to try using the hand raise feature, please do so as a test.
I'll allow plenty of time at each opportunity for public comment for members of the public to provide notification via WebEx. When I call on a member of the public to speak, our meeting technology host will unmute your microphone. Before commencing your comments, I suggest you first affirm that we can hear you. Please state your name and address and state the name of any organization or person you are representing. Organizations should choose 1 representative to speak on their behalf. Each individual will be allotted 3 minutes per matter pending at the discretion of the board. To assist you, we will display a timer on the WebEx screen to ensure each member of the public receives a consistent amount of time. Ms. Lane will signal you when you have 30 seconds remaining, as well as when time is up. For all attendees, please direct your comments to me. I will either respond to you directly or defer response to another board member or officer of the district. The board values and welcomes civil, respectful, clear, and concise communication from the public. During public comments, speakers should refrain from repetitious, profane, or irrelevant comments. Speakers shall refrain from polling the board, as such vote is not on the agenda and prohibited by law. If you have written materials, please email them to corporatesecretary@oppd.com, and they will be received on our behalf. For those in the Omaha Douglas Civic Center, please hand your materials to Ms. Lane. In summary, we will take in-room comments first, then WebEx comments, and then we will have a last call. Ms. Lane, will you please take the roll call?
Director Bogner? Here. Director Kavanaugh?
Here.
Director Core?
Here.
Director Howard?
Here.
Director Molhoff?
Here.
Director Moody?
Here.
Director Spurgeon?
Here.
Director Williams?
Here.
Notice of the time and place of this meeting was publicized by notifying the area news media, by publicizing the same in the Omaha World Herald, OPPD outlets newsletter, oppd.com, and social media, by displaying such notice on the arcade level of Energy Plaza, and by emailing such notice to each of the district's directors on August 11th, 2023. A copy of the proposed agenda for this meeting has been maintained on a current basis and is readily available for public inspection in the office of the district's corporate secretary. Additionally, a copy of the Open Meetings Act is available for inspection on oppd.com and in the meeting room. The consent agenda items are as follows. Item 6, approval of the May and June 2023 financial reports, June 2023 meeting minutes, and the August 17th, 2023 agenda. Item 7, award RFP 6069, Fall 2023 Transmission Construction Resolution Number 6581.
If there are no corrections, changes, or additions to the consent agenda items, then I need a motion and a second to approve the items.
So moved.
Second.
We discussed these action items at the all committee meeting on Tuesday, August 15th. Do any members of the public in the room have comments on these consent agenda items? If you'd like to make a comment, please come to the podium. Do not see any. Do members of the public on WebEx have a comment on the consent agenda items? Please send a chat to the meeting host or use the hand raise feature in WebEx. Telephone users can press *3 to raise their hand. No comments online either. Ms. Lane, will you call the roll for the consent agenda?
Director Bogner,
Yes.
Director Kavanaugh,
Yes.
Director Corr,
Yes.
Director Howard,
Yes.
Director Mulhoff,
Yes.
Director Moody,
Yes.
Director Spurgeon,
Yes.
Director Williams.
Yes.
The first board discussion action item is near-term generation resolution number 6582. Now therefore be it resolved by the Board of Directors of the Omaha Public Power District that the near-term generation resource plan as described on attachment A hereto is hereby approved, and the System Management and Nuclear Oversight Committee shall, no later than October 31st, 2023, leverage the board's current policy governance framework to establish a process by which the board will exercise its duty of oversight of the near-term generation resource plan execution through the identification of key performance indicators and subsequent targets and monitoring of progress. And this resolution updates resolution number 6351 and 6422 relating to the acquisition of the renewable assets, and resolution number 6518 relating to North Omaha Station, and will guide the district's near-term resource acquisition strategy. And the engineer's certification requesting that the board authorize management to negotiate and enter into one or more contracts to provide all engineering, procurement, and construction of on-site fuel oil storage assets, substation, transmission, and distribution infrastructure, generation assets and facilities, emissions equipment, fuel supply and/or conversion-related equipment and services, and other infrastructure, and to negotiate and enter into other necessary contracts to meet the district's anticipated generation resource needs outlined in this resolution through a combination of on-site fuel oil storage, dual-fueled generating facilities, energy storage facilities, renewable generation facilities, and/or to acquire capacity and output from renewable generation facilities without compliance with the sealed bidding provisions of Section 70-637 to 70-641 of the Nebraska Revised Statutes is hereby approved, and management is authorized and directed to negotiate and enter into the necessary contract or contracts to implement the near-term generation resource plan described on attachment A, subject to review and approval of the final contracts by the district's general counsel, and the notice required by Nebraska Revised Statutes Section 70-637 shall be published in the Omaha World Herald or other similar newspaper of general circulation.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Okay, colleagues. I will, I'll spare us from the long walk down memory lane on this one. And just make a couple comments, and then I'll turn it over to Director Williams to facilitate the conversation. The first thing that I want to do is express some gratitude. First to the team that worked on this and all those that have shepherded this through the process. It has clearly been no small task. We see it. We see how hard you've worked. We are grateful for all of the exceptional work that the team has done over the course of many months. And I'll just say I'm truly impressed by the way in which the team pulled all of this together. So thank you many times over for all of the work on this. I also want to thank the public for engaging. We, back in June, this is on track for us to come to the board for action, and the public engaged, and we greatly appreciate the way in which the public has offered us perspective, insight, comment, feedback. This is a public entity, and we represent the public, and so when the public engages, I think I speak for all of us when I say we are grateful for the way in which the public is engaged in this one in particular. And finally, I'd like to thank my board colleagues for the way in which you've really done an exceptional job diving into this work. This is a huge decision. This is a huge effort for everyone going forward. I was speaking with Javier in advance of the meeting, and I said, the big work looms. It's out in front of us. We know that, and we see that. And that's why we, I think, took our time to make sure that we really thought through this, asked all of the good, hard, provocative questions. I was proud to work with all of you on this because the way in which you engaged, I think, was exceptional, and you represented your constituents really quite well. So kudos and thank you to the rest of the board. I want to just take a moment to connect a couple things. For the public, you see two things on the agenda that are very much related. The action item in front of us at present is to approve the engineer certificate for the near-term generation efforts going forward. But immediately thereafter, we're going to discuss Strategic Directive 9, and we're following a similar path that we followed in the past when we extended the life of North Omaha about a year ago, wherein we're using the policies and the governance structure that we have at our fingertips to ensure that we have good mechanisms by which we can continue to provide the oversight that is required of us. Clearly, we heard that from the public as something that they were wishful for in some of the comments that we heard in May and June. And so I wanted to draw that connection for the public, and we'll talk more about what that really means in SD9 and how that's going to work here in a moment. But I wanted to pause just for a moment, make sure that the public understands that these two things are very much related. I'm going to stop there. And again, I'll turn it over to you, Director Williams, for you to facilitate the conversation going forward.
Thanks very much, Director Moody. Just as a reminder, we highlighted at the beginning that we'll take clarification and questions from board to staff at the beginning, then comments from the public, and then any follow-up discussion from the board prior to the vote. And so with that, do any board members have any clarification questions that they'd like to ask about anything related to the near-term generation resolution? Director Moloff.
Thank you, Chair Williams. I have had some questions, even as late as today, about the nuclear option in this and why that doesn't float to the top. And I would just like for Javier to talk a little bit about how we considered nuclear and why at this time it's not one of the options on this resolution.
Thank you, Director Molhoff, for the opportunity to address these. As we presented a few times on committee meetings and that we've had in the past few months, the traditional nuclear technology for traditional generators of the size that we know today was not included, one, because of the cost and the time that it takes to build those, and recent experience with those units. However, a relatively new emerging technologies, the emergence of small modular nuclear reactors that are much smaller in size. Instead of being 1,000 or 2,000 megawatts, you're talking about 60 to 80 megawatts each module. These technologies shows promising aspects that are very appealing to utilities going forward. For one, they are non-emitting generators. They, of course, they're nuclear and they need to be discussed and considered with a lot of care and regulation. The main reason why they didn't make it into this portfolio is because the technology is not mature enough yet. It's not commercially available yet, and the price is too high so far for us to have included into this portfolio. We have teams that are looking into that, and we are actively working, for example, with the Nebraska Public Power District and the state of Nebraska in exploring potential sites for future generators. Those are many years into the future, but we are actively working today because it takes years of planning before we could embark into in this technology. So those are the reasons why we didn't include them in this particular portfolio, but I wouldn't rule out that technology to come in next few years when it's ready for us to deploy.
Thank you, Javier.
Do any other directors have any clarification or technical questions from staff about the near-term generation resolution?
Yes, I've just got one. Consistent and similar to Janice's question, I think we've definitely heard some public comment about why demand side management and energy efficiency can't be part of this, a more meaningful, I'll say, part of the solution for this. Clearly, that's something that I think we all feel is important, and I know that Javier, you and your team do as well. But I wanted to just give you an opportunity to talk a little bit about how that fits in and or how it sits alongside the work that we've got in front of us.
Certainly, I'm going to do a very quick overview, and then I'm going to ask either Brad Underwood or Colton Kennedy to help address demand side management. It absolutely a very, very important piece of this puzzle, right? We're trying to serve load, and that load, to the extent that we have instruments and programs to manage that load, it would help us tremendously to manage those peaks. By demand side management, we're talking about demand response, where you have customers, whether it's residential, commercial, or industrial customers, who are willing and able to curtail or lower their energy use at the times of the year when we need it the most, and therefore obviate the need for additional generation. That has to be part of the solution. That is currently part of the solution. I'm going to talk about this later on in my president's report, where we established a new peak. And had we not had those instruments today, that peak would have been much higher. So absolutely, there is a place in this portfolio for demand side management. There are a lot of discussions in the industry, and I'm going to ask Brad to maybe address these a little bit about how we count demand side management as a load reduction strategy or as a peak load shaving strategy. It's the same strategy, but it's counted differently, and the markets are evolving and figuring out how do we best deploy those resources for us to really get the benefit of demand side management. And Brad?
Yeah, great summary. Thank you. My name is Brad Underwood. I'm the Vice President of Systems Transformation here at the Omaha Public Power District. Just a modest supplement to your comments, Javier. Demand side management really comes in two forms: energy efficiency and demand response. And so if you're not familiar with the district, we have about 180 megawatts of energy efficiency and demand response that's been tracked to date. And that is larger than many of our power generating facilities. And so that's been a good story for us. That will continue to grow. Mr. McAravey leads that effort with his customer service team. And we'll see that grow year over year here into the future. We won't see it grow fast enough to solve the immediacy of the problem and the magnitude of the problem, but it is a very important tool in our tool belt. And in conclusion, Javier alluded to some industry conversations around demand response in particular. And it's really, it's a technical matter, but it has to do with how much we count on each resource as an industry. And are we valuing it properly relative to its ability to serve load? And so that's a very high level summary, but those conversations will continue. Colton Kennedy to my right here is the chair of the Supply Adequacy Working Group, which most folks probably aren't familiar with, but he's going to be a very important piece of that with his colleagues to advance how we treat demand response in the future. And so we've got a very active presence in that space as well.
And that is within the Southwest Power Pool.
Thank you, sir. Yep.
Thank you.
That's all I've got. Thank you.
Great. Anyone else, any questions? Okay, sounds good. Do many members of the public in the room have a comment on this action item? If you would like to make a comment, please come to the podium.
Hello, my name is Todd Cushing. I'm with 1623 Farnham here in downtown Omaha. We're a data center to some people. We're an interconnection facility to the region for multiple states. If you've got 60 phone carriers or over 33 broadband providers in our facility. So if you're doing something from Chicago to LA or to the Midwest, you're coming through this facility and through Omaha. The power is a very big deal for us, and communications is going to become a bigger deal for the metro. So as people look at AI right now, the ability to have what we call latency, the speed from A to B, is not as important right now, but it'll become very important in the next year or two. So for power, having the ability to have something that's very clean, something that's very reliable is going to be very important. It's important to us now. We've got 4 circuits coming into our building. We pay for 1 extra circuit, 1 extra transformer today because reliability and maintenance is very important. Oppd is a great partner. I'm a born and raised Omaha person. I ran data centers in this environment for most of my life. So I've worked at Fiserv, which was First Data back in the day, and I brokered data centers with Travelers and Fidelity and others, but just about every company in the city I've worked with. So I worked around data centers. It's not just data centers, it's communications. So the ability to communicate and have data transfer through Omaha and for businesses to run is going to be very important. So the importance of having a reliable system that can grow and a reliable system that can be maintained is going to be detrimental to the growth in the fabric that's going to support the city. So beyond that, we're really looking at growth for our business in particular. We're looking for a second site. We're being asked by the hyperscalers, the search engines, the social media that use our facility as well. What are our plans to grow? I can't find anything over 5 megawatts today in Omaha for a second site. I've got other states telling me, hey, come here. We'll be great. But I'm Omaha born and raised. I'd like to have it close to Omaha. I'd like to tether it off of our existing facility. So I know eventually the Oppd will work through that, but it's a important step for not just us, but others that are my colleagues that own data centers or are contemplating bringing data through this area, that they can maintain their growth, that they can find growth, that they know that the investment is going to be made by Oppd for that sector. It's a fairly important piece of, that people second guess why data centers and what's the head count. It's really about, do you use data? Is there going to be more data growth? And there will be. So power, the growth, what you're talking about for the initiative is very important to us. So I appreciate it. Give me a chance to give my input. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments in the room?
I'm Katrina Thompson, and I'm a optometrist, and I have a residence at 817 South 38th Street, Unit 15 here in Omaha. I am also living in other places throughout the state of Nebraska due to being targeted by excessive amounts of biologically hazardous radiation. One comment I have is that the state of Nebraska had taken the quality out of the environment. It used to be the DEQ, and they put energy into the environment. Energy being in the form of radiation, which is ionizing and non-ionizing. We all know that ionizing radiation is biologically hazardous, and non-ionizing radiation often is not, but it can be. And when it does become biologically hazardous, there are a lot of people in the medical profession that are gaslighting. And this includes the National Institute of Health. I understand that we have from the federal government that they state that there is no liability for some of these cases of what I believe is genocide with increased suicides, especially among veterans. Even though Oppd may not be breaking any laws, what you need to consider is the corporatist attitude. It is not capitalism, it is corporatist. And so these corporations that are sucking this energy that you are providing unlimited amounts of, which also is lining your pockets with money, they are going to take away basic human rights. And I have been one of those people that has been under some type of um, research project. I think in 2014, Obama had put through the Brain Initiative, where they do research on people's brains. And I happen to be one of those that was especially targeted. I have gone through UNMC. I do wear a Faraday hat, and that is in my best interest because I have gone through periods of hallucinations. And that is what you see when people are considered mentally ill. Uh, it's not necessarily a mental illness, it's the artificial intelligence that is messing with their brains. It is basically
30
considered,
seconds.
it's basically considered mental anguish. And these are all legal terms. Uh, when I called the city of Omaha mayor's hotline, as soon as that the fifth generation came through with the wireless communications in the summer of 2020, my whole body was vibrating. That causes global warming. Thank you.
Appreciate your comments. Other comments in the room?
David Begley, 4611 South 96th Street. I thought it was quite interesting and revealing that the board of directors didn't mention that this resolution would authorize $2 billion plus in capital spending and a 10% rate increase. OPBD is a creature of statute. You can only do what is authorized by statute. And that's really important. Some state constitutions require a clean environment. Some states have a net zero carbon law. Nebraska has no such law or constitutional opinion. Therefore, in my legal opinion, your net zero carbon policy is ultra virus and contrary to law. You had no authority to enact that policy. OPBD is required by law to only provide low cost power, not high cost power. 3 statutes in Chapter 70 say it is the public policy of this state to provide power at as lowest cost as possible, consistent with sound business practices. And this year, reliability was added. So here we go with reliability. CEO said in the World Herald that the sun is predictable. We know when it comes up and sets. Begley says it is also known and predictable that the sun sets every night. And OPPD customers will need solar power at night. So this is this 2 + 2 = 5 gaslighting that you're doing. OPPD CEO previously said solar and wind is the lowest cost, probably relying on the EIA and the Lazard. So the thing of it is, levelized cost of energy for solar and wind is 472 megawatts compared to natural gas is 93 megawatts. EIA doesn't include the cost of backup electricity with nat gas or battery storage. You've already overbuilt to the tune of at least 345 million with Turtle Creek and Standing Bear stations. EIA also doesn't account for the carbon dioxide emitted to mine all those minerals. You can see there, it's a big number with wind and solar compared to natural gas. Quickly, here's a little chart. Solar and wind high, nat gas low. Your annual report for 2022, residential, 33% of revenue, and industrial 20%. Load level.
30
This
seconds.
is all per year reports. Industrial is going to go up to 21%. So I submit to you that the data centers should be paying for this $2 billion CapEx spending you're going on. Finally, I would say rates, you're required to have fair, reasonable, non-discriminatory rates. This overbuilding solar and wind are not low cost. And what's going on here is the data centers are going to be, the people east of 42nd Street are going to be subsidizing the data centers. And that's rate discrimination. So the people of east of 42nd Street, the residential customers are be making Mark Zuckerberg richer. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there other comments in the room?
Laverne Train, 114th and West Maple. You're incorrect about the emissions of nuclear power, mining, refining, transportation, maintenance, construction, all has more emissions than solar or renewables, and energy efficiency, of course, has the least. So anyway, reason I'm here. So you may have heard that global warming is a hoax. You may have heard it's a big money grab for corporations. You may have heard that, Al Gore doesn't know what he's talking about. You may have heard all those things. Well, let's say that's all true. I've been coming here since 1990 with the same exact thing I say every time, 100% efficient, 100% renewable with radical end use efficiency. Now, why would I come in 1990? Al Gore was still a senator, inventing the internet. Greta's parents were still in high school, and nobody had global warming on their lips. So why was I coming in here back then? Well, this is the reason right here. As this has been published every year, it's from the, it's so hard to read, provided by the Nebraska Department of Health and Human Services Environmental Risk Assessment Program in cooperation with the Nebraska Department of Environmental Quality Fish Tissue Monitoring Program. And so what does all that mean? It means that we can't eat our fish here, safely anyway. And I wanted to stick this up here, and you will note right here, it says the pregnancy of nursing women and young children especially should follow these guidelines, as the developing nervous system is particularly sensitive to mercury. Where is this mercury coming from? It's coming from coal burning. So every single year that you guys have been burning coal, you've been damaging fetuses' brains. The unborn children have been damaged by that, because if people eat that fish, the mercury gets in and hurts those babies. So doing this, doubling your renewable energy is great. Do I want you to use fossil fuels, the natural gas? Absolutely not. But what I do want you to do is shut down the coal plants as soon as possible, because I've been here for the sole reason to get rid of mercury out of our environment. You've been using our city, our rivers and our lakes as a dumping ground for your waste, for our waste. For every time I use electricity, I think about it. So the fact that we're a public utility, we're all in cahoots to this, and and this was I just printed this morning, so it's still going on. 35 years I've been testifying to try to get rid of mercury out of our fish and to save the babies. But we're still running those coal plants. Down here in North Omaha, we've extended them. We're still running those coal plants. Down at the other coal plant that you
30
want to
seconds.
continue running. You're not going to shut those down. None of this is talking about shutting down those coal plants. All this is doing is doubling our capacity. I want our coal plants shut down. I want you to replace them. And the only way to do that is through renewable energy. I understand you got to use natural gas. Someday you'll hopefully be using hydrogen. That's my goal. And nuclear power, the waste is forever, and that emits carbon. Whenever you're storing it, you got lights on down there at the nuclear waste site right now. So anyway, have a nice day.
Thank you.
Can you hear me? It's been really tough sitting over there, and particularly when the board members talk to a fellow board member. You got to talk to the mic. I hope that doesn't count in my 3 minutes. About 12 years ago.
Sorry, please state your name and address for the record.
Jeffrey Picorni, 7726 South 162 Street, 68136. Everybody's kind of stolen my thoughts, except for one. The only director I see here that was here 10 years ago, 12 years ago, when they were going to rebuild Fort Calhoun is Mr. Kavanaugh. And I would like for you directors to get together with him for coffee or supper or a lecture to see what they did. I came by and I said, please don't rebuild that thing. The licensing life is almost over with. It's 25 years. They put $2 billion into it, and 5 years later they closed it up. And now it's a expensive glowing artifact that's costing you folks a lot of money. It would still be that glowing artifact, but it didn't have to have the $2 billion put into it. Equipment from Japan, and I mean, it was amazing. But I wish you'd talk to Mr. Kavanaugh about it and see what his thoughts were at the time. And here again, I probably was one of 2 or 3 people that came down and said, please don't do it. I would like to see a show of hands tonight to see how many people are here to protest the rate increase. I see a lot of OPPD connected people. I would like to not see any management speak at this meeting, because management's goal is to build bigger and better and more expensive and colossal manufacturing facility. That's not the name of the game here. One of the speakers put up the state law, reliable, least expensive. I wish I could repeat those. That's the name of the game here. You're governed by state statutes, not by, and this is another thing too. The what does near-term generation mean? Who wrote that? If that is an obfuscation at its best or its worst, I don't think I've ever seen anything like that. And then reading your committee meetings, and it really aren't committee meetings. It's the committee of the whole. All 9, 10 directors get together with, and then you have a hour closed meeting. There's no input from the public. Then after that opens up, you don't get input from people like me. You make it as difficult as possible for participation from the public. And I have to remind you again, the Omaha Public Power
30
District.
seconds.
It's not private, it's not a corporation, it's a public district. It's like the city of Schuyler, which is a classic example for you folks to study sometime. They've got $1 million in the bank, no debt. And it's an interesting case study. They do it because they buy power from people like you. But it can be done. It can be very efficiently done with no pollution. You've got a real problem coming up with thermal, with BTU production. You're going to produce 1 trillion BTUs making the electricity, and then when it goes to the data centers, they're going to have this plume of BTUs. And if that isn't going to cause climate, I hate to say climate change, you're going to evaporate all the moisture in the air for many, many square miles. And if Nebraska wasn't seeing problems with rainfall right now, and then you're going to give them the best rates.
Mr.
Yeah.
McCorney,
Pardon?
your 3 minutes have elapsed.
Okay, thank you. At any rate, I don't know how to further address this unless you talk to Mr. Kavanaugh.
Thank you. Would anyone else in the room like to make comments? Great. We have comments online.
David Corbin. David, you should be unmuted now.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. David Corbin, 1002 North 49th Street, representing Nebraska Sierra Club. You've all seen the Nebraska Sierra Club's comments that we submitted about the near-term generation plan. So I'm not going to belabor those. And I'm happy to hear that the discussion that went on previously about energy efficiency and clean energy for residential as well as businesses. But I do want to emphasize the need to promote and incentivize energy efficiency and solar power for new and existing buildings, particularly in neighborhoods like North Omaha that meet the criteria for Justice 40 federal funding. I appreciate very much that you met with North Omaha Ad Hoc Group today. Oppd should rightfully be very proud of your reliability record and for your ranking in affordability. But there are 2 other national comparisons that are less than stellar. This is for the whole, these statistics are for the whole state and not just Oppd, but they do reflect on Oppd as well. Nebraska ranks 35th for energy efficiency in the United States. And Nebraska ranks the 6th worst in energy use per capita for residential and 9th worst for overall sectors, businesses, industry, so on. This is a justification for effective and concerted effort for increasing energy efficiency and solar programs in our state, and specifically in Oppd's territory, especially when there's ample federal funding to help Oppd to improve these areas. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there other comments online?
Kenneth Winston.
And can you say hello so we can hear you?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Chair Williams and members of the OPPD board. I appreciate the opportunity to speak. My name is Kenneth Winston. I'm speaking on behalf of Nebraska Interfaith Power and Light. I'd like to begin by saying thank you to the board for postponing the decision on the generation resolution to this meeting. This provided more time for the public to get answers and opportunities for more public input into the process. I also wanted to follow up on what Mr. Corbin said and state my gratitude to CEO Fernandez and members of senior management for participating in conversations with the North Omaha community. This is very important for building relationships and hopefully will lead to positive collaboration on activities that can benefit both OPPD and the people of that community. Regarding the generation proposal, we appreciate the fact that the majority of the new generation will be renewable energy. However, we want to raise some concerns. First of all, we want to encourage OPPD to engage in helping the customer owners to reduce energy consumption as much as possible. First of all, we'd like to ask for identification, evaluation, and rollout of more energy efficiency programs. The lowest cost kilowatt is the one that isn't generated. Energy efficiency also increases grid resilience by reducing the amount of energy needed at times of peak demand. We also have concerns about the impact of rate increases on residential customers, particularly low-income customers. We would like to encourage the development of programs which can help low to moderate income residential customer owners reduce their energy bills through energy efficiency improvements. OPPD is the organization best equipped to facilitate timely access to federal, state, and internal energy efficiency programs for customers it has identified as having high energy burdens, which will help them reduce their energy bills, as well as helping OPPD reduce its energy needs. I wanted to call attention to the DSM requirements, the demand side requirements of Purpose Section 111D, which requires utilities to promote demand side management. We believe that OPPD can do more in this area than it currently is being proposed. We'd like public discussion on how OPPD addresses this requirement. We want to make sure that any new generation helps reduce greenhouse gas emissions as much as possible. Wind and solar are currently the lowest cost generation resources available. They're both zero emission resources and provide good value for OPPD's customer owners. Also wanted to recognize the fact that the CEO report speaks about the IRA, and we want to encourage OPPD to investigate that as much as possible. We'd be glad to work with your board and staff in support of these efforts. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there additional comments online? Okay, great. Final check in the room. Anyone else? Okay, thank you. CEO Fernandez, there were several specific points there, and I think perhaps you were taking notes. Would you like an opportunity to respond to anything that was offered today?
I do. Thank you for the opportunity. There were many great points made. Probably the one that I would like to address, because just this afternoon we had a conversation with members of the ad hoc committee in North Omaha, and I think it's important for me to address that. There was a comment made earlier about this plan does nothing to cease coal operations, and I want to clarify that we are going to cease coal operations in our North Omaha station no later than by the end of 2026. That plan was discussed, debated, approved exactly a year ago, and we continue to work really, really hard. The new generation that is in front of you, that is subject to approval, does not necessarily affect that plan. That plan is already in place, and the new generation, the new plants that we're building, Turtle Creek Station, Standing Bear Lake Station, Platteview Solar, are necessary, especially the natural gas generation peaking stations are necessary for us to interconnect, and the necessary step for us to take that additional step to retire North Omaha units 1, 2, and 3, and then refuel units 4 and 5. So just an opportunity to clarify that point because it is very, very important for many, many members of the community, and I was reminded of that this afternoon.
Great, thank you. There were a couple other specific points that I wanted to take an opportunity to respond to. The term near-term generation, can you remind us the term, the duration of what we're anticipating will be impacted in the near-term generation recommendation?
I really appreciate the challenge and the naming convention. If you recall, in 2019, the board approved the procurement and build out of 600 megawatts of natural gas peaking stations and 600 megawatts of solar utility scale solar. At that time, we named those suite of projects, which we didn't even know how many projects there were going to be, but that authorization we labeled that power with purpose. And it was a naming convention that we adopted inside the utility because it was relatively easy for us to then, when we're talking about programs and resourcing and prioritization of resources, to refer to that program as a whole as power with purpose. As we worked on the new generation that is needed for the growing demand that is coming, we had to figure out a different naming convention because we are still working on the power plants that were authorized in 2019. And we had to figure out a different naming convention to talk about these new authorization that hasn't been authorized, but we've been planning. And that's, we came up with the term near-term generation. I accept the challenge because it's really not that near term. It's going to take us many years to build it. So, but that is the reason why we came up with that name. It was purely to be able to differentiate projects and portfolios. Going forward, it is very likely that we are no longer going to refer to one as power with purpose and near-term generation, but rather our portfolio of new generation that we're all building. I hope that answers your question.
Great, thank you very much. Do any directors have comments you'd like to share about the near-term generation resolution? Yes, Director Kavanaugh, please go ahead.
Thank you. With the industrial data centers and the number of residential customers that are increasing all the time, as well as the required increase in our power demand, the growth and expansion of production is clearly necessary. There's been a pretty good amount of give and take involved in getting to this point where we're at now with this current status of the resolution, and I do support the resolution. It will be a challenge to meet the forecasted demands with the high percentage level of carbon-free power that is planned. Time will tell if we can meet this type of production in our planning. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from the board?
Sure, I'll hop in. I'll add to my comments from earlier today just a few things, and I think as complex as this is, it boils down really simply for me. As Director Kavanaugh just pointed out, our customers are calling on us to act, quite simply. There is demand that kind of knocks me out of my chair every once in a while when I think about just how much we're growing. And our customers are asking for it, they're demanding for it, and we have an obligation to serve. Fortunately, as Mr. Underwood pointed out at our meeting on Tuesday, he eloquently helped me understand that the three key pillars of our mission are coming together. And that doesn't always happen. Reliability, affordability, and environmental sensitivity. We're able to achieve and drive closer and closer to those goals through this solution. That's a really meaningful piece of this to me. We don't have to sacrifice anything here. So I'm really excited to support this. It is our customers are asking for it. We found a great solution for it, and teeing up SD9 conversation, the board I think has found a really exceptional way to engage in it as it unfolds going forward. So I'm looking forward to voting yes.
Any additional comments? Great, thank you. I would like to offer some comments myself as well. As discussed on Tuesday, this resolution and the associated resources have been recommended to meet the needs of our customers across our service territory. And Director Moody highlighted that, and we have customers here this evening highlighting the specific needs. So I think it highlights the fact that we are experiencing significant, unprecedented growth in demand for energy, and specifically for clean energy. This recommendation will maintain the reliable and affordable system that our customers expect while preparing for economic development and being ready to provide the power that improves lives in our communities and into the future. The work by staff has been admirable, and I want to thank you all again for everything you've done for several months up to the discussions in May and June and the intervening months, and to get to where we are today. I think we all know that there is no perfect answer, but we still have to make decisions based on the best available information and continue to move forward, as we said, to meet the needs of our customer owners. There were a couple specific points that we talked about on Tuesday that are critically important to me personally. Some of the new generation will come from fossil fuel-based resources, and they are, at the time of construction, anticipated to be unmitigated, meaning they will have carbon emissions. I think this highlights to me the need for an update to SD7 for more clear guidance on the future emissions reductions that the board expects as we plan for resources into the future. There was a question earlier about the renewable characteristic of the resources, and we have discussed in the past that 90% of the energy from this recommendation is anticipated to come from renewable non-emitting resources. And I want to extend appreciation for the focus on bringing those online. There is significant challenge with that across the country, across our service territory. And so thank you to staff for making that recommendation and for that focus on those affordable and low and non-emitting resources that we know we need and that our customers are asking for. We've talked a lot about efficiency and demand side resources. And as we discussed on Tuesday, and even from CEO Fernandez, we anticipate that the 32 megawatts is probably not as much as we can do and as much as we will need in the future, but it is the number that is specified now and what we anticipate will be achieved in the near future. On that same note, after the decarbonization study, we talked about advanced feasibility studies, specifically including demand side resources. I really welcome a resource planning activity that focuses specifically on demand side resources in the future. That would be separate than what we're talking about today, but the number of comments we received about efficiency and demand side resources over the last few months really highlights that we are focused on the large centralized generation now, but there is a specific interest from our customer owners to look at the efficiency and demand side resources in the future. I hope that that includes both a discussion about codes, as well as upgrades, as was highlighted in the comments today, to existing homes and buildings with a specific focus on assistance for low and moderate income households. And as was highlighted on Tuesday, our staff is doing a great job to work with community organizations and to find out what the Inflation Reduction Act and other policy has made available to us to achieve those outcomes. So thank you for the work that has happened, and I look forward to more of that into the future. So again, we know the need. It is clear that we need to provide the energy for our community going forward, and this recommendation meets those needs for our customers. There are areas where we have additional work, and we have talked about where that additional work will occur by the board and by staff into the future. And so this is the resource plan, the resource recommendation that we need now, but we know there will be more in the future. And I look forward to continuing the policy work by the board and hear additional recommendations from staff how we will continue to provide the affordable, reliable, and increasingly environmentally sensitive energy into the future. So again, thank you to everyone who's put in so much work to get us to this point. And I look forward to seeing this approved and moving forward to meet the needs of our customers and continue the excellence that OPPD has been known for. Seeing no other comments? Seeing no other comments, Ms. Lane, will you please call the roll?
Director Bogner,
Yes.
Director Kavanaugh,
Yes.
Director Corr,
Yes.
Director Howard,
Yes.
Director Mulhoff,
Yes.
Director Moody,
Yes.
Director Spurgeon,
Yes.
Director Williams.
Yes.
The second board discussion action item is number 9, SD9 Integrated System Planning Policy Revision Resolution number 6583. Now therefore be it resolved by the Board of Directors of the Omaha Public Power District that the proposed revisions of Board Policy SD9 Integrated System Planning are approved, effective August 17, 2023, as set forth in Exhibit A attached here too.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Thank you, Director Bogner. as mentioned earlier, this connects to the near-term generation and is, in my view, a great policy mechanism by which we're going to, as a board, continue to keep an eye on our duty of oversight. I want to highlight the 4 key aspects of this policy, the additions to the policy, just for the public, so we can help everyone understand. First, it establishes minimum requirements for updates to the board. Those are quarterly. I would fully anticipate we'll get more frequent, consistent with how Power with Purpose, we've been getting updates. Those have been monthly. I'm not going to set that expectation, but the policy establishes at minimum a quarterly requirement. Second, it requires that the CEO and team engage the board in key decisions. I think it's fair to say the board has continually been engaged in key decisions. Anyway, this is a way to formalize that in many ways. I do want to point out for the public that there will certainly be times in which the board engagement happens behind closed doors. And that's because there's a lot of really sensitive, important strategic information that will be shared with the board, and we'll be given an opportunity to absorb it, to reflect, to ask good questions. And so establishing that requirement to engage the board in an ongoing manner, in my view, is something that's really important for us going forward. Third, it establishes an annual check-in through which monitoring reports will help us kind of collectively look around and affirm that the direction we're headed is still solid. I think that's going to be a really good exercise for us once we get that first opportunity, because if I've learned anything in this industry, things change fast. And so I'm looking forward to having an opportunity to sort of check in and make sure we're all on the same page. And then finally, through that table that's in the resolution or that's in the new SD, it sets timelines for when resources will come online. So I think in that sense, it is the board sending a signal to the team that says, hey, here's kind of what we're imagining for when these resources will be contracted. And to be sure, those dates were not arrived at by the board in a vacuum. That was something that we talked pretty extensively with the team about. So I don't have really many more comments to add. Just wanted to highlight what I think are the 4 key attributes of the new changes to SD9. Thank you.
Thank you. Directors, do you have any clarification questions from staff regarding the aspects of this policy update? We're going to take a check and see if we can make the language a little larger. 1 second, please. Yeah, the red line portion looks like page 2. Or is this one slide maybe? That might be more difficult.
I can try without the safety net.
If you have questions, we can.
Yeah,
highlight for
the
you.
one concern or question I have is deals with the actual carbon-free annual increases, the individual numbers listed each year. And let's see where we're at here. There we go. For instance, I guess the forecasted number for the end of 2024 is 200 megawatts. The second year, it's or 2026, it's 400 megawatts, and then so on and so forth. The numbers aren't really, I've lost the word I'm trying to say. It's not accumulated, it's not accrued, but shouldn't the numbers kind of get added together year to year to see if we're reaching our goals or not? For instance, the first year of 2024, the number is 200 megawatts. Let's say, for instance, we hit 400 megawatts, which would be great, put us way ahead of the game, right? But then the second year, which calls for 400 megawatts, let's just say we only come in at 250. I guess we'd be ahead of the game still, but we'd basically be, and I don't want to use the word violation, but we would run afoul, I guess, of of this directive because the 400 megawatts wasn't reached in that second year. It's a little strange. It seems to me these numbers should have been kind of, and I should have brought this up either in committee or on Tuesday. I started thinking about this last night. I should have done this before. I realized that. And I don't know. Would it have been easier if it would have been presented in that fashion? Or does it not even matter?
Or do you or Steve want to clarify if, how this accumulates over time, essentially?
Well, the way I see it is it's very much the way you talked about, Director Kavanaugh. And I think in the spirit of what we're trying to do here with the strategic directive number 9, it's we basically saying we need to move fast, right? And having those goals for us to measure against those goals is one way for us to say, hey, are we moving fast enough? The beauty of this is that this is happening inside a strategic directive. It's not a resolution. And under the strategic directive, it is a resolution, of course, that modifies the strategic directive. But the way this is going to be monitored by the board is one where we already have a muscle that has been built, where we can have those type of discussions. Say, in your example, the first 200 counts against the first 2024, and we have an additional 200 that now starts counting against the 2026 number. That there was a very specific reason why we say contracted by the end of 2026, right? Could be contracted by the end of this year, and it will start counting against those interim goals. But again, all of this is subject, of course, to the debate and the discussion that we will have during systems management committee meetings, where the board will have an opportunity to say, yes, I think this counts. No, I don't think it counts. We actually talked on Tuesday's committee meeting about the word contracted. What does this mean? There was a healthy debate and a healthy discussion about, well, we'll figure out. There will be many different contractual milestones within the same project. And I think at the end of the day, as the board on an annual basis reports and votes on the monitoring report, you will have an opportunity to vote on your opinion on, even though a facility may not necessarily be energized, in your opinion, is OPPD staff doing enough and working fast enough to achieve these goals as stated in the table? So it leaves room for that interpretation and that healthy debate and discussion that I fully expect the board to have in this realm.
That's all I have right now, Eric. Thanks.
Are there any other questions for clarification? Okay. I guess by way of clarification, I would like to re-highlight the fact that the word contracted is in there, and we did have a lengthy discussion about this on Tuesday. And I don't have any more specific clarification request right now, but we anticipate this being a learning process moving forward. And to the customer owners and members of the public, I just wanted to re-highlight that we have had lengthy discussions about this. The board and CEO Fernandez and the staff have had very lengthy discussions about this. And so we understand that we will be working for clarification on what the word contracted means as we move forward. We understand this to be functionally the board asking the public for your trust, with the understanding that we are your elected representatives, and we will also ask for your input as we move forward. So there are mechanisms built into SD9 that will allow ongoing oversight from the board to the deliverability of the resources that are outlined here. I just want to highlight that we know that this is not a single time stamp in time that will end the discussion here, but we anticipate additional discussion in the future, and we encourage and will strongly appreciate ongoing participation from members of the public as we work through understanding what contracted means. We might not have the 100% final definition answer today, so there is nothing I can do to ask for more clarification now. We will have additional discussions in the future, but I just wanted to highlight that we have talked about this a lot, and we know that this is an item that will require additional discussion as we move forward. And the board and CEO and staff all agree that this is a specific term that we will talk about as we review the monitoring reports into the future. So I hope that clarification about the word, and if anybody needs more clarification, I would refer you to Tuesday when we had a lengthy discussion about this. But we know that there is not a perfect definition now, but we will continue to discuss moving forward when we do the monitoring reports for SD9. So with the clarification out of the way, we'll now take questions or comments. I'm sorry, comments from members of the public. So comments from the public in the room, please come to the microphone.
David Begley, 4611 South 96th Street. I understand this is a government entity, but it's usually, or it should be run on a business-like basis. And I would submit to you that, you've set these deadlines, but there's no carrots or sticks. And I'll remind you of what Charlie Munger, Omaha Central High School, class of 1941, said, show me the incentive and I will show you the outcome. Peter Drucker, who I'm sure the CEO is familiar with, he said, what gets measured gets done. So if you want to get this stuff done, set up an incentive pool and then also have a clawback pool, penalty on your employees for not hitting these deadlines. So I want to come back, we were just told, or we were just talking about the other resolution. And of the energy, 90% is from renewable. And your three pillars are low cost, reliable, and environmentally sensitive. I will remind you that the statute which controls your actions is for low cost energy as a matter of public policy. Reliable, yeah, that's real important too. Intermittent wind and solar is not reliable in the least, and is very expensive. Environmentally sensitive, like I said earlier, that was ultraviolet, ultravirus, and contrary to law for you to adapt SD7. Now, you also have a statute that requires you to be fair, reasonable, and non-discriminatory in your rates. So what's going on here is the data centers are requiring this high-cost intermittent solar and wind, and then you're pushing off on the commercial and residential ratepayers for this intermittent energy. Intermittent energy, that's rate discrimination. What you're really doing here is you're deviating from your mandate. And we just saw in Hawaii a horrific loss of life. The initial, and I'll remind you, Hawaii Energy is about the same size in revenue as Oppd. It appears that they weren't taking care of their fundamental business. They weren't burying the power lines. They knew the wind was a big problem out there, and they only spent $245,000 on what they were supposed to be doing. And so what's been admitted is that they were all
30
focusing on
seconds.
clean energy. So we got a bunch of dead people in Hawaii because the power company wasn't doing what it was supposed to be doing. Finally, customer satisfaction. I'm really dissatisfied. I could have talked for 2 minutes more. When you're going to be spending $2 billion plus, you're going to be borrowing twice your revenue. And this is really, again, it needs to be said, OPPD is going to spend $2 billion plus on wasteful solar and wind. That is dead wrong. Thank you.
Are there additional comments in the room? Thank you.
Trina Thompson, 817 South 38th Street, Unit 15. On the lighter side of things, I would like to put in a plug for the 50th anniversary of Woody Allen's film Sleeper. It would be a great opportunity for you to take a look at it and to see what was going on in that movie. Also, as far as psychology is concerned, it is a legislative profession, just like optometry. In high school, they do teach about the Milgram study, which was a pseudo experiment at Yale University in 1965. They had a maximum of 450 volts. That is a power company term. What it was about was acts of genocide and why others just obey orders. And it does talk about the dangers of obedience, which is having to do with the 5G and technology. Also, to kind of bring it to home, think about real estate values. If people are getting attacked in their own home, they are going to, it's going to blight their home, and it will create a stigma on the real estate, which will devalue the value of that real estate, and you will not have that tax income. So please consider what type of activities that you are doing, and thank you so much.
Thank you. Additional comments in the room?
Laverne Drain, 114th and West Maple. I just really am excited about this because it really appears as if the board is engaging with management. Back in the day, like I said, I've been here for 30 years. I used to call the board the bobbing heads because they would just agree with whatever management told them to do. And it never seemed like we had much input and it didn't seem to matter. They were just gonna burn coal and have nuclear and be the largest polluter in the state. So this kind of initiative really gives me confidence that the board is really engaged with management and really engaged with the development of our energy sector. So thank you very much. I approve of this totally.
Thank you. Additional comments? Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Name and
Jeffrey Picorni. Mr. Williams, you talk too fast. I don't know how about the other people, but it's really tough to comprehend what you're saying. I want to direct some comments to Mr. Moody. I wish I had a tape recording of what he was saying, but he was basically advocating secret meetings. I don't want to know what you're doing for policing or security at Fort Calhoun. I don't know what you want to do to keep people from shooting out your transformers, but I do want to know what the inner workings are here. I own part of Omaha Public Power District, a small part. You've got to open up your meetings. There should be no closed meetings, period, per agenda. If you want to say, okay, guys, we've got a problem at Fort Calhoun security wise, I move that we close the meeting to talk about it and solve it. But to come up with a general closed meeting agenda item every meeting is wrong. I don't know how I compare to you folks IQ wise, education wise, income wise, whatever. The one thing I know is I'm probably the oldest guy in the room. I'm 80 years old. Might be somebody older, but I'm 80 years old. I've got an experience factor on you. It may not be a good experience factor, but I have an experience factor on every one of you and people in the audience who are a lot of OPPD people. You've got to open your meetings up so you get input from people like myself. I don't have the best ideas in the world, but I've got 50 ideas to contribute to the reduced need to generate power. That you wouldn't have to do one new item of generation, not one more windmill, not one more solar panel. You could do it. I've been in 1,000 meetings, and I've seen some of you folks in meetings. Legislator Howard, for one. I've been in committee meetings, legislators, city council, OPPD, MUD. You're spending $2 billion and you're doing it almost with the wave of a hand. Excuse me, wave of a hand. This should be a 5-hour meeting, and there ought to be 100 ratepayers here. I don't think there are 100 ratepayers. And there ought to be all kinds of input, all kinds of discussion. It should be a wealth of information cascading upon you folks so that you don't come in here and say, yeah, we had talked about it for 5 minutes. I'm going to vote for the $2 billion. That's what they did when they rebuilt Fort Calhoun. And 5 years later, they closed it. And if there would have been any thought into the process, and I'm
30
not saying
seconds.
I was the genius on that, but there was just no process. You've got to do the process. You can't come in here and vote yes on $2 billion and go home. Can't do it. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments in the room?
Hi, my name is Phil Green. I'm the city administrator for the city of Blair, Nebraska. Our address is 218 South 16th Street in Blair. Just wanted to come tonight and let you know as board members how appreciative we are of having you have some actual details in this initiative that you're looking at. The city of Blair works very, very hard with our business partners at the biocampus that's next to Blair. One of the constant things that we're hearing from companies that are looking at locating here in Nebraska is what kind of power do we have available to us? And so just really want to encourage you to put some details in here, then help hold the staff accountable for that, move forward with those. I appreciate the comments that were made about nuclear a little bit earlier. When the time is right, I know of a great place in Washington County that would love to have you back in there. So thank you for being great partners with us.
Thank you. Are there other comments in the room? Okay, comments online.
David Corbin.
David, are you there? David, perhaps you're muted on your side. We think you're unmuted on our side.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay,
Thank you.
yes, always seems to be a pause there between. Yeah, I just want to make.
Sorry, real quick, David, sorry, apologies. Name and address and any organizations you represent,
Oh,
please. Thank you.
David Corbin, Nebraska Sierra Club, and 1002 North 49th Street. I just want to make a brief comment to set things straight. Since it's a foregone conclusion that OPPD is expanding generation from methane, also known as natural gas, it's also a good thing that burning methane produces less air pollution than coal. That's a good thing for North Omaha and for the city in general. Locally, this is a plus, but I do want to point out that in the grand scheme of things, from an environmental and climate point of view, when you consider the consequences of fracking, like excessive water consumption and water pollution from fracking chemicals, in addition to methane leaks and public health implications, I just want to point out that if you look at all of that, it's not such a great thing. Like I said, it's a great thing for air pollution locally, but there are those other considerations. Thank you.
Thank you. Additional comments online?
Kenneth Winston.
Ken, are you there?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Please go ahead.
Okay,
Thank
sorry. I keep looking at the unmute button. Wasn't sure it worked. Thank you. Once again, my name is Ken Winston. I'm appearing on behalf of Nebraska Interfaith Power and Light. I wanted to express my appreciation to Director Williams and Director Moody and all the others who put together the SD9 revisions. We appreciate the board setting out oversight goals and having oversight of resource acquisition and putting renewable energy goals in policy. We do want to state that we would like to see the deadlines to get renewable energy under contract. We'd like to see those increased so that the renewable energy would be obtained sooner and that additional renewable energy would be obtained by the deadlines. We appreciate the comments by Director Williams earlier today regarding evaluation and planning related to demand side management and energy efficiency, and look forward to provide more input into that process as it goes forward. Thanks for the opportunity to comment.
Thank you. Additional comments online?
No comments online.
Thank you. Any final comments in the room? Okay. And then directors, any comments, discussion about this item before we vote? Director Kavanaugh, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you all know, I don't like exact dates and hard numbers when establishing policy. I like the idea of directional type language, as I've said before. I prefer to avoid potential of placing management in a position to meeting a deadline and possibly being in conflict with what they feel might be best for the district. And I can see that can happening with this, with the wording of this resolution. And for that reason, I will be voting no on the strategic directive change. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay. For my comments, first, I would like to apologize for the speed with which I am speaking. I am aware that that is a problem, and I'd be glad to talk to you afterward in person. I'm sorry about that. To the comments, I would like to respond to the comment about the length of the meeting as well. You mentioned perhaps a 5-hour meeting. I would suggest that since we began discussing this in February as a board, and then through the meetings in May and June and the intervening months and Tuesday and today, I would guess that the board and the staff have spent at least 10 times that much time discussing this. And we had public meetings in May and June and a public comment period and in the meeting today. So the opportunities for public comment have been numerous, and I appreciate the work that our staff has done to make sure that we're hearing from our customer owners as we consider something so important as the definition of the resources that will meet the needs of our customers moving forward. So there is probably always room for improvement on public engagement, something that is very important to me, but I appreciate the work that has been done so far. I personally significantly appreciate the definition included in the policy here. This was the #1 thing that we heard in May and June from our customer owners to help to have the board clarify the expectations and the oversight that we provide to our CEO and to our executives and staff on delivery of the projects that have been outlined in the recommendation that's already approved. And so I really appreciate the way that we use the strategic directive mechanism to deliver that oversight on behalf of the customer owners who have elected us to lead this organization. So thank you again to the staff who helped put this together, Director Moody and the Systems Committee who brought this policy to the rest of the board as a recommendation. I'm glad to see this, and I hope that we exceed the timelines and the amount of energy that we bring online, because I know that there is continued growth, and I know that we can always use more energy to meet the needs of our customers. And so I look forward to meeting and exceeding all of the expectations here, and I know that staff can do that. So with that, I believe there's no more comments. And so we'll have a roll call on this item.
Director Bachner,
Yes.
Director Kavanaugh,
No.
Director Core,
Yes.
Director Howard,
Yes.
Director Molhoff,
Yes.
Director Moody,
Yes.
Director Spurgeon,
Yes.
Director Williams.
Yes.
SD9 Integrated System Planning Policy Revision, Resolution number 6583 passes 7-1. And Near-Term Generation Resolution 6582 passed 8-0.
Thank you for the clarification on the vote. Next item on the agenda is the President's Report. CEO and President Javier Fernandez.
Thank you, Chair Williams. I'm going to try to be quick here because we've been talking about this for a while, but this is really important. I really appreciate the public's engagement. We didn't have a board meeting in July, and I'm just going to acknowledge that the numbers you're going to see here are for the month of July. I didn't report the month of June, just calling that out. So for the month of July, our Nebraska City Unit 1 and 2 had capacity factors of less than 50%. A number of factors contributing to that. Nebraska City Unit 1 tripped. That means it came on offline on July 16th due to equipment failure on the generator output of electrical ducting. That unit remained offline from that day on until the end of the month, and it was finally returned to service on August 7th. That explains the lower capacity factor. It was a hot July, and we could have used that unit, but it was offline because of technical issues. Nebraska City Unit 2 had a 45% capacity factor. It was online the entire month of July. However, previous to July, we found an issue with the boiler feed pump motor that forced us to run that unit at a derated state. So that unit ran the entire month of July, but at a derated state, which explains the lower capacity factor of 45%. North Omaha Unit 4 and 5 ran at 68% and almost 59% respectively. North Omaha 4 was online and available the entire month of July. Unit 5 in North Omaha was online most of the month. The unit did trip on July 26th due to a boiler feed pump, and it was restated towards the end of the month. Next slide, please. So this was very interesting. July, the month of July, our balancing generation was busy. They were busy balancing all the generation resources and load that was coming in and meeting the demands from all of our customers in very hot days. Our Cass County station, both units 1 and 2, had an almost 20% capacity factor for the month of July. 18 and 19 successful starts respectively for units 1 and 2. Again, they ran the way they were supposed to run. We had a lot of maintenance on those units earlier in the year, and I'm very glad to report that they performed the way they were expected to perform. Jones Street saw a little bit of activity with a less than a 1% capacity factor, but we did start Jones Street a couple of times that low capacity factor. Sarpy County Generation Station, it has 5 units in there. Unit number 1 was offline for the entire month of July. We are working on a hot gas path outage, and we expect that unit to return back online early October. The remaining units 2, 3, 4, and 5 were available, and they ran for a combined capacity factor of over 10%, 10.1%. Really interesting here to note also, North Omaha units 1, 2, and 3, the oldest units in our fleet ran, and they ran well. And this is, I want to take an opportunity to shout out to our maintenance craft, all of the folks who are maintaining those units. It's not easy to maintain units that are of this age. They maintained them, they operated them. They were there when we called them, when the market called for them, and they ran the way they were supposed to run. North Omaha Unit 3 ran online most of the month. It operated 15 straight days supporting grid reliability, whereas Units 1 and 2 were online towards the end of the month, July 25th and through the end of the month. They saw us through the peak the new peak load that we established on July 28th. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. Next slide, please. On the renewable side, as expected, renewable energy contributed 17.6% of OPPD's retail energy sales. These are the months where we get wind, but it's not the highest wind. The highest wind usually comes in the shoulder months, in the spring and in the fall, and we're expecting these to pick up later in the year. Capacity factors for renewables was 28%, 29% for our community solar array in Fort Calhoun, and then for our entire wind portfolio was 22%. Again, this is for the month of July. Next slide, please. Okay, so very exciting times for OPPD, not unexpected. This is very much tied to the resolutions that were just approved a few moments ago. We established a new peak load record on Friday, July 28th, 2,670 megawatts at 5 p.m. And I want to point you to the bottom of the slide where it shows the last peak we broke was about a year ago, August 2nd of 2022, of 2,540 megawatts. We saw a 130 megawatt jump establishing this new peak load. Again, not unexpected. We know we're building. CFO Bishop talked on Tuesday about we've added 6,600 new meters, residential meters since last year. That's record. We are seeing a lot of industry, manufacturing, data centers already starting to energize, and that explains that, and the hot weather we experienced that particular day explain the 5.1% increase of our peak load. So this is again just confirming what we've been planning for, and I fully expect this trend to continue as we continue to build, add load and build resources. But this is a very good reminder of why we need all of the resources we have in good working order and build the new resources that the board just approved. Next slide, please. K-Junction solar summary. We published these. This has been on the news. We talked about this in the wire. It was a project. It is a project solar project that was acquired by OPPD in July. The project has the potential for 310 megawatts, and it is located in York County near McCool Junction in Nebraska. Provides many benefits. This project it supports the load growth of OPPD and the load growth of Nebraska. It helps ensure generation resource adequacy and improve system reliability and resilience. We're very, very excited about this project. We are talking to a lot of people in York County. We're engaged with the community, with farmers, with landowners, with county commissioners, and I think it's very, very important. We're excited to be part of the solution of creating, building generation to meet the needs of the state and really come together as a state to meet that opportunity. Next slide, please. Greener Together. We've talked about this project. It's been mentioned a few times already. It launched in April of 2022. The Greener Together program for OPPD connects community members and organizations to collectively build a greener community. As part of the program, 4,475 members contribute monthly, and all funds collected go towards selecting and supporting green projects within our community and OPPD's territory. Very proud to report that as of July of 2023, 347,000, a little bit more than $347,000 has been contributed to the program, and we've already awarded $274,000 across 4 community projects in the past year. You can see some of the projects listed. The latest ones that we've announced, the Florence Futures and No More Empty Pots. The first one talks about improvements made in the neighborhood where Florence Futures is, and then the other one, No More Empty Pots, for supporting the installation of solar panels, both projects in North Omaha. Very excited about these program, and there's a lot more work to do, but the number of projects that are being submitted, the quality of the review, it's just heartwarming to see both OPPD staff and the community coming together to make these projects a reality. Next slide, please. Someone mentioned earlier the Inflation Reduction Act, IRA. It is in my president's report. In late July, we launched a website as well as marketing campaigns to help customers understand the Inflation Reduction Act benefit related to energy savings and electrification. Now, in addition to the resources on the website, we are promoting this content through social media, search engine marketing, and through the contact center. We will continue to watch and research for the release of additional benefits, specifically those for businesses. As more IRA benefits are released, we will add content to OPPD's website and market those through necessary channels to reach the right customers. I want to acknowledge these. There are a lot of grants, and this being a federal act, it's complicated. It's thousands and thousands of pages. And so what we are doing is dedicating resources at OPPD to really understand, digest, figure out how can we extract the most value from these federal dollars that are available to our community, to the utility, and to our customer owners directly. So we're excited to continue this work. And this is just one example of how we're trying to make this information available to our customer owners. Next slide, please. Honoring our community, as we always talk about, summer time is county fair time, and we have a lot of fun in our county fairs. They provide a networking venue for people in groups like 4-H and other agricultural organizations, and they offer entertainment to bring rural communities together. OPPD is a proud sponsor. We support concerts and other family-friendly events at the fairs on the 13 counties that we serve, and we sponsor things such as parking areas for people with physical disabilities. Next slide. Almost done. Really cool slide for me. It's a volunteering aspect of what OPPD employees do. From mid-June through now, employees volunteer at the food bank for the Heartland OPPD Women's Network Build of 2023 with Habitat for Humanity, Omaha for Us, Heartland Hope Mission, Iron Hawk Juniors Triathlon, Keep Omaha Beautiful, and the Maha Festival. We sorted and repackaged frozen food. We framed the house. And we say we, it's really the OPPD team. I'm not that good. I can't do all of these things by myself. Cleaning for a grand opening. We bagging pallets of food for food kits for distribution. Zero waste monitoring at the Maha Festival. It's just a lot of work happening in the community, lots of need, and I am very proud to see the OPPD employees living out our core values of honoring our community, having a passion to serve, and caring for others. Next slide, please. Open Omaha 2023 happened on August 5th and 6th in partnership with Omaha by Design, who encouraged residents and visitors to explore over 75 fascinating spaces in our community to promote tourism. Super proud of OPPD that we were highlighted through our OPPD Arboretum as one of those sites, and we organized a scavenger hunt for attendees to participate. I'm very, very proud of what we've done with the Arboretum. In fact, I spent some time this afternoon there, and it's just amazing what we've done with that place. Not a lot of people know about this, so I'll use this as a public service announcement. It's on 108th and Blondo. You can see a big substation there, but not a lot of people know that you can actually go in there. There's a park with walking trails, and it's just beautiful right now at this time of the year. Next slide, please. Community celebrations during the month of July, mostly July, but there was an event in June. OPPD filled the streets with joy and merriment by participating in 4 parades and 1 Juneteenth celebration. Employees from our Ashland Center and streetlight worker from the Elkhorn Center were the drivers of the trucks, while others from our employee resource group, diversity, equity, and inclusion team, executive leadership team, and our board of directors also participated. They walked and staffed different booths. On June 17th, we had the Juneteenth parade and the Omaha Freedom Festival. On July 14th, we had the Ashland Stirrup Days parade. July 17th, the Pride Parade, and July 29, Native Omaha Days. Next slide, Metropolitan Community College. We partnered with Metro on a sustainability boot camp. We were proud to sponsor the 4-week sustainability camp at Metro Community College Yates Illuminates campus, where students enjoy experiential learning about hydroponic gardening, composting, and culinary skills, how to make a windmill and solar-powered cars, and more. You can see some of the pictures here. I spoke with a couple of staff members who were there, and they were super excited just to see the energy from all the students. Next slide. Very proud of OPPD employees. We hosted by the Custer Public Power of Broken Bow. 66 competitors from utilities across the state competed at the Nebraska Line Workers Rodeo, including 12 OPPD employees on July 20 and 21st. OPPD employees won trophies and prizes. I'm just going to name a few. Ted Kyra and Brent Foxhoven, one from the Humboldt Center and one from the Elkhorn Center. They took first place in the Journeyman Herdman Rescue, Journeyman Cutout Changeout, and overall among the Journeyman teams. Super, super bright individuals, and it's great to see them earning all of these prizes. In addition, Brent Foxhoven took first place in the Mutual Aid Cross Arm Install event with a Nebraska Public Power District Journeyman as well. So great to see two different utilities working together and competing against each other too. And lastly, Gil Sarasua and Dan Foreman finished among the top 6 apprentices overall. So not only our journeymen, but also our apprentices have a chance to compete and improve their skills. Last slide. This is a opportunity for us to remember those we lost in the line of duty. Mr. Dwayne Wilson died on July 22nd, 1968 from injuries sustained when a pole he was helping to remove toppled. The crew was removing a line near 8th and Douglas Street down here in downtown Omaha to prepare for dismantling the old Oxarben Bridge. Dwayne was 26 years old and was an apprentice who had only been with OPPD for 13 months of the time of his death. He was survived by his wife, Beverly. And that, Chair Williams, concludes my present report.
Thank you very much. We have an opportunity for comment on other items of district business. So anyone who'd like to share comments on other items, please come to the microphone first. Thank you.
David Bagley, 4611 South 96th Street. I'm glad the CEO mentioned K-Junction Solar. I had previously submitted a records request to find out how much you paid, and it was denied by the Fraser Stryker Law Firm under a Nebraska law exemption. But feel free to tell the public how much you spent. I think the thing here is the French, who you bought it from, knew how desperate you were to acquire more solar, and you were about to spend $2 billion plus. My dad used to say that money's burning a hole in your pockets. You know, you're spending other people's money, and you're just not accountable at all for this. And so you probably got taken to the cleaners on the purchase price. Here's a picture of Dr. Edward Teller. He worked on the Manhattan Project, and then he was the father of the hydrogen bomb. So he was a very important physicist. Before he passed away, he signed a petition which said he was of the scientific opinion that the release of carbon dioxide, methane, or other greenhouse gases is not going to cause catastrophic heating of the Earth's atmosphere or disrupt the Earth's climate. So Dr. Teller's dead, but we got Dr. John Clauser, who won the Nobel Prize in 2022, and he says the same thing. Climate change is not, there's no climate crisis. You know, and the thing you need to appreciate is carbon dioxide is only considered a pollutant because of a 5-4 decision by the U.S. Supreme Court. And on top of that, it's only 400 parts per million of our atmosphere. It's a trace gas. That's where Clauser and Heller were coming from. So I got another PhD here for you. Oh, and I want to mention again, the Manhattan Project cost $2 billion. That's the same amount of money you're going to spend on a bunch of intermittent solar panels and windmills. It's a complete waste of money. And again, contrary to your statutory duty of low cost and reliable power, this SD7 net zero is ultra virus, and on top of that, it's contrary to law. So we got Carl Sagan, another PhD. You're all true believers in global warming. So Sagan
30 seconds.
said, you know, one of the saddest lessons of history is that if you've been bamboozled long enough, you tend to reject any evidence of the bamboozle. You can't convince a believer of anything, for their belief is not based on evidence. And that's clearly what's going on here. You're ignoring your statutory duty. And last, you know, we get that 97% canard. These people don't want to lose their funding in the academy to concoct this scam on global warming, because it's just non-existent, and you're going to drive our rates to triple. Thank you.
There are other comments in the room.
Katrina Thompson, 817 South 38th Street, Unit 15. I personally don't think that there's going to be a lot of global warming with carbon dioxide and coal use. The times that I have been attacked with the radiation, my body was overheated. So that tells me that the radiation that comes from the transmitting antenna is what would cause a lot of urban heat islands and stuff like that. I know that the NOAA has been doing some research for the urban heat islands, and that really does need to be looked at. It is radiation. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments in the room?
Laverne Train, 114th in West Maple. Regardless if global warming's a hoax or not, mercury's not a hoax. It's right here. It's measurable. You can go test your fish. For people who are concerned about the rates, Mr. Williams here did a public conversation or group meeting at a public park, and he explained the rate structure for residential and corporations and larger industrial extremely well. He really just settled my mind on that and did an enormously great job. Whoever explained it to him, if you know, needs to maybe put a video on your website explaining your rate structure and how people are charged and all the different tiers and all the different, you know, reasonings and all that. I can't go into it, but it was really an excellent presentation. The Inflation Reduction Act, that was really what I was coming up here to talk about, which I'm glad you had that up there. You know, currently your website has the tax incentives, but now they're gonna be pushing out actual cash and cash back for low income. And I really was thinking about how this really affects you more than anybody else on the planet, because they have state initiatives, they have city initiatives, individual initiatives, they have nonprofit initiatives. So I'm hoping you really take the lead to explain it to the state, because some states are not accepting the funds. They're saying, no, we don't, you can't do that here. And so really guide the state, guide the city, you know, because the city may want to put up solar for a parking lot, or a nonprofit may want to put solar on their building, or I might want to fully electrify my house. Every one of those decisions affects you. And so this implement, you know, the Reduction Act really has a huge effect on you. And the fact that you want to spend 2 billion, as much money you can get from the federal government as possible in every single, you know, get the state to get some money, get the city to get some money, get individuals to get some money, nonprofits to get some money. That all makes your 2 billion cheaper. And at the end of the day, if the federal government's paying for those solar panels or for those efficiency changes or for the state what they want to do, or the electric car transfer or the electric chargers in our garages, all of that is in that, you know, like you said, it's thousands of pages. I did try to read it, and it was very difficult. But, you know, hey, you just got to spend time and do it. So, so I'm glad to see that you're involved in that, but I really hope you take the lead in that and really guide all of the agencies, all of the individuals. I know I got 30 seconds. And to really get as much of that cash as possible and to understand how to get it. Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you. Additional comments?
Jeffrey Picorni. The $2 billion has just come up in the last few minutes. I don't know if a board member has said that number today, $2 billion, or given a percentage of rate increases that and it's the poorest, I shouldn't say, it's the least earning population that's going to get the largest increase. If you're making $30,000 a year, you don't have a lot of maneuvering room. There's no elbow room in that. You got to pay your electricity, you got to pay food, rent, clothing, and then there's nothing left over. And that rate increase is going to come right out of that. I don't think you've discussed that at all. At least you haven't today. And I think I've been here for the complete meeting. Nobody's talked about rate increases or $2 billion. That $2 billion is almost like it's not going to, it's poison talk. You can't do that. Am I right? And then last question, when do you go to the Nebraska Power Review Board with your plan to build this stuff? For construction permit.
I'll field that question and respond at the end. Do you have any additional comments now, or would you like us to respond? to the question?
That's not, another period of time for the questions then?
Sure. How about we pause?
Public comment.
When do we have public questions?
You don't.
Okay.
But we would.
It just, I mean, this is not a user-friendly deal. It's the most unfriendly situation, and it's been that way for a long time. I thought with the new board, there's only one familiar face left over. Everybody else is new, from the president right on down. And it's the same old stuff. I mean, I think there's 4 or 5 of us that have contributed to the conversation. So I'm assuming the rest of them are Oppd people, or they have a phobia against speaking in public. But there ought to be 100 people here today, maybe giving better speeches than myself, so that it appeals to you folks, so that I can afford the rate increase. I'm fortunate. I'm one of the more fortunate people in the world. But there's 100,000 people in the city of Omaha that cannot afford it. They cannot afford it. And they ought to be here today. Thank you.
Thank you. And as I indicated, I would like to offer CEO Fernandez an opportunity to respond specifically about the Power Review Board, if you'd like.
So tonight's vote was a necessary step before we can go to the Power Review Board and then discuss with the Power Review Board the necessity of the generation. The Power Review Board will look at the redundancy, the need, the cost, the location, et cetera. But we can't go to them before having the authorization.
Do we have a specific timeline for that now, or is
No,
that still to be determined?
We do not.
Thank you. There were 2 other items that I would like to respond to. Regarding the potential for future rate increase, there was information presented in May and in June about that. And staff, you are correct. A number of people here are staff. They would be glad to speak with you about what we understand now about the potential for the future costs of the resources that were outlined. So there are people who can answer that question. And then lastly, there are a number of comments about a specific number related to what we discussed for the resources. CEO Fernandez, would you care to respond about how the actions today are not specifying any particular amount of spending?
Absolutely. Well, if you read the resolution right, there's no dollar amount that's specified in the resolution. What the resolution allows us to do is to start procurement, design, and planning for the construction of new facilities. The way dollars get approved is through our annual corporate operating plan that gets approved and vetted and thoroughly analyzed by the board. Sometimes that includes rate increases, which again are very heavily, thoroughly analyzed and debated. So those will come out every single year, as we always do. And I want to remind the members of the public that in addition to have SD9, which is the resolution that just passed, we have reliability resolutions, we have SD7 environmental stewardship resolutions that has been discussed today. One strategic directive that hasn't been discussed today is strategic directive 2. That's rates. We have a very clear direction from the board to keep our rates, to aim to be 10% below the regional average, and reminded to the public that we achieved that goal last year, and this was presented a few months ago to the board. And further, this is not established in SD2, but we are over 19% below the national average. So just a reminder to the public that our board, and I'm very proud of the work that the board does here. You hold us accountable really well, especially when it comes to rates. We don't take that lightly, and we will do our best job to continue to meet reliability. environmental sensitivity goals, and at the same time, keep a very, very close eye on rates. Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, thanks for the response. Are there any other public comments in the room? Okay, are there public comments online? No comments online. Last chance in the room. I don't see anyone. And as a reminder, as we said, there are members of staff here. If you would like additional clarification, public comment is input to the board. We would be glad to speak with anyone who has additional questions. Members of staff would also be glad to speak with anyone who has additional questions. We appreciate the comments. We appreciate the involvement. And with that, we've reached the end of our agenda and the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.